Good evening, everyone. I'm going to flag very quickly for you a few of the opportunities and challenges that I see in business and human rights over the next 5 years. Being an African, and since I work in Africa, I'm going to talk from an African perspective. The first thing I'd like to flag is the issue of resource extraction. I mean, I'm sure practically everybody in the audience knows that Africa is somewhat synonymous with the resource curse phenomenon. And it's not something that has gone away yet. But the good news is that we're seeing more and more effort to avoid it. And it's not coming from the north, as has been the case in the past. We're actually seeing the effort coming from local NGOs in Africa. And I think that that's a trend that will continue. To take Ghana or Uganda, for instance, those two countries are going to become oil-producing countries in the next few months. In fact, Ghana, I think, before the end of the year. And somewhat surprisingly, the amount of effort that has been put into ensuring that Ghana does not become another Niger Delta has been massive. It's been local NGOs working at serious rates with local communities, and making their voices heard to the government to ensure that that does not happen. And we're seeing the same thing happening in Uganda too. So I think that in the next 5 years, we're going to see more African countries more conscious of what they can do to avoid the resource curse and to take steps to avoid it. And one of the key ways in which has been recognized as the way in which resource curses can be avoided is through proper regulatory frameworks. And these two countries that I mentioned, Ghana and Uganda, have been in the forefront of that. They're trying to ensure that there's adequate policies and laws in place. So yes, I see civil society in Africa pushing for more strongly for better regulation to avoid the resource curse. Second issue I'd like to point out is the quest for accountability and remedies for human rights violations. Both Peter and Michael have talked about the ATCA, whether or not it's useful, whether it continues to be useful. But I think that is actually besides the point, because even before the last ruling by the Federal Appeals Court about whether or not multinationals can be held accountable under international law for human rights violations, we're already seeing NGOs in the South, in Africa in particular, exploring a variety of forums that in the past had been ignored. So for instance, the ECOWAS court in West Africa has a case before it brought by a Nigerian NGO alleging, well, it relates to the Niger Delta, alleging human rights violations, environmental violations against a number of oil companies. This court has been, well, almost ignored in the past, but now suddenly it's been used. And then we're also finding that national human rights institutions are finding a new area in which they can be effective, and that's human rights violation as it relates to the private sector. So that's an area that I think will continue to grow. And I should also flag, of course, the, well, still recent, because it was earlier this year, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, recently ruled on the Endorois people in Kenya whose lands had been taken away, and the commission said that was a violation of the right to development. That is the first regional tribunal to discuss the case, to discuss development as a human rights issue at that level. And quickly, the third issue that I want to flag, which I think will continue to gain attention in the next 5 years, is the issue of tax avoidance. And that's largely because in many ways we're seeing that traditionally the debate on business and human rights has been led from the north and just a little contribution from the south. But now southern NGOs, I think, are beginning to identify the issues that are important to them. And tax avoidance is one of those things. They are continually making the compelling argument that when companies don't pay the taxes that they should, then the government do not have the resources to provide the social and the development needs of their people. And so I think that's an issue that we'll continue to see that increasing in the next 5 years. And lastly, let me just talk about companies, the way I see them operating in the next 5 years in Africa. The focus right now is mostly a CSR, philanthropy model. You know, the company decides what it's going to do. We're going to fund football, or we're going to, you know, sponsor basketball or something. But now that local NGOs are so much more aware of the human rights, responsibilities of companies, I think that's going to also shape how companies themselves determine what they do. Thank you.